Okay, welcome back. This is the second video for Tell Me When tutorial. The previous video I talked about how to monitor cooldowns. In this video I'm going to talk about tracking debuffs. This is useful for anyone with a dot that casts a dot or a bleed that they want to make sure stays on the target without having to look up here where the debuffs are. So I'm going to first go in here, click enabled, and select buff/debuff. So the same config panel is used for both a buff or a debuff. So first thing to do is check, is this a buff or a debuff? This is going to be a debuff, and I'm going to start typing the name. And this debuff is called Vampiric Touch. Just have to start typing some of it, and you can click on it. Just like the cooldown monitor, I'm going to say show timer. In addition to that, you want to make sure you select only show mine. May or may not be relevant. If you're needing a bleed on a target, you could leave this off. But for this demonstration, I'm saying I only want to see my Vampiric Touch in the event that another class is attacking the same creature. It's a debuff. I'm going to say always show the icon. However, if it's absent, just like the cooldown, I want to fade it. And absent colored icons are tinted in red. The other important thing to do is select what do you want to track it on. So by default, it's going to look on the player, but we want to actually select target. All right. So that's the basic setup for tracking a debuff. And I'm going to toggle it off. And you can see when this debuff does not apply to the target, it's going to be in red. So I'm going to cast it. And you'll see it comes back to full color and starts ticking down, letting you know how many seconds are left. And it's the same as that you would see up here, but obviously it's somewhere where you can monitor it. Once it's gone, it goes back to red. So I'm going to copy this a couple of times for my other spells. Shadow Word Pain and Devouring Plague. Same thing, just copy them and then change the name of the spell. And as I apply them, you'll see the timer start. Pretty self-explanatory. It's nice because during combat they'll end at different times depending on when you cast them, so this lets you know when they're not present on the target anymore. And they all have different lengths of time, and some can be extended by other things. So that's tracking debuffs. I'm going to show you how to track a buff now. Many classes have a buff that they want to make sure is always on. Paladins have Righteous Fury, Shadow Priests obviously have Shadow Form, and there's times when you may not have it on, and you definitely want to be reminded, especially when you're switching specs. So I will, down here, I'm going to say buff debuff. It's a buff. This is, you can have timer shown, but my Shadow Form example doesn't have a timer, it's just a toggle, so it's not necessary. So here I'm going to type Shadow Form and select the first one. Click enabled. Player is where I'm going to watch it. It's going to be on me. And I'm going to say only show the icon when it's absent. There's no reason to see it if you have it on. It's just kind of a reminder. So click that and then toggle it. So it doesn't show up, but if I were to break out of Shadow Form, it's going to let me know right away, hey, go back in Shadow Form. So when I do that, it goes away. So that's buff monitoring. You can do it with things that have a timer if you need to. One common idea that you see people using this add-on or others to do is add another group here, and I'm going to say it has one column, let's say 3 rows. Hit OK. It's right here. I'm going to make it really big. Then I'm going to copy this over here. I'm going to move it. I'm going to copy it again. You're like, what are you doing? But you'll see. Another buff I want to make sure I have on is Vampiric Embrace. And a third one would be Inner Fire. Luckily these are all just toggles, but if I've switched specs I may have forgotten to put them on. So I'm going to turn that off. You'll see that once I toggle it, if I don't have these spells on, it's going to be giant in my face like, hey, you need to turn these on. So as I turn them on, they'll disappear. And you won't see them unless they need to be put back on, or for a priest, if I were to switch and have to emergency heal someone, I would break my shadow form. So I would want to know that before I went back to DPS I would go back into shadow form. So that's tracking buffs and debuffs.